I'm Julie Baumgardner, and this is the Marriage on the Daily podcast, the podcast designed to give you tools and encouragement to help you do married well on the daily. Because after all, it isn't the grand gestures that make or break your marriage. It's actually what you do or don't do on the daily that either builds a strong foundation or chips away at your core. You can do this, and I'm here to help. Welcome to the Marriage on the Daily podcast, the podcast for young married couples that brings you practical wisdom to build a healthy marriage. I'm your host, Julie Baumgardner. My guest today is my longtime friend and a legend in the marriage world, Dr. Gary Chapman. You may know him as the author of The 5 Love Languages, which is a New York Times bestseller. I think it's published in 50 different languages. But that's just one of many books that he has written, including another jewel that I love, Things I Wish I'd Known Before Getting Married. Gary and his wife, Carolyn, have been married more than 60 years, which I just love. That makes my heart happy. He's a family counselor. He hosts a nationally syndicated radio show called Building Relationships with Gary Chapman. And he's just one of the finest people I have ever known. So, Gary, it's just a privilege to have you on the podcast today, and I'm excited for our discussion.
Well, thank you, Julie. I am delighted to be with you again.
Well, we could go in so many different directions, but I really would love for us to talk about the 5 love languages, because I think it is one of the most practical tools that couples can use to help build a strong foundation in their marriage.
Well, I certainly agree with that. I've had so many people say to me, Gary, that book saved our marriage 20 years ago.
Really?
Because it's been out for 33 years now.
Yes.
So we were just we were ready to give up. It was just we just felt like we're not making it.
Yeah.
And we read the book and the lights came on and we realized we haven't been speaking each other's language, and neither one of them felt loved. So, and I think everybody agrees that one of our deepest emotional needs on the human level is to feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
If you're married, the person you would most like to love you is your spouse. And if you feel loved, then life is beautiful. But if you feel like they don't love me, they wish they weren't married to me, life begins to look pretty dark.
Yeah.
And much of the misbehavior, I think, in marriages comes out of that empty, what I call an empty love tank.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. So how did you actually come up with the 5 love languages?
Well, it grew out of my counseling. I'll never forget the first day it dawned on me that what makes one person feel loved does not make another person feel loved.
Yeah.
The couple came in. I never met them. I found out they'd been married to each other 30 years. And after we talked a bit, the wife said, well, Dr. Chapman, let me just tell you why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel any love coming from him.
Mm.
We don't argue. We're cordial, but he lives his life and I live my life. And there's nothing going on between us. And I just feel empty. And I don't know how long I can go on like this. But I looked at him and he said, I don't understand her. I do everything I can to show her that I love her. And she's telling you what she's been telling me. She doesn't feel loved. He said, I don't know what else I can do. Mm. I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I get home from work before she does. I start the evening meal. Some nights I have it ready when she gets home. If not, she'll help me. After we eat, I wash the dishes every night. On Thursday, I vacuum the floors. On Saturday, I wash the car, I mow the grass, I help her with the laundry, and he went on, and I was beginning to wonder, Julie, what does this woman do? It sounded like he was doing everything.
A lot, yeah.
And he said, I don't know what else I can do.
Yeah.
I looked back at her, and she started crying, and she said, he's right. He is a hard-working man, but we don't ever talk. We haven't talked in 20 years. He's always mowing the grass, washing the dishes, vacuuming the floors. And I realized here was a sincere husband who was doing everything he knew to express his love to her,
Yes.
and a wife who didn't get it emotionally. And
Mm.
then I heard similar stories over and over in the years following that. And
Man.
eventually I thought, there's got to be an answer to this. And I went back and read notes that I made when I was counseling and asked myself the question, when someone said, I feel like my spouse doesn't love me, what did they want? What were they complaining about?
Yeah.
And their answers fell into 5 categories. And I later called them the 5 love languages and started using it in my counseling.
Okay.
And helping couples understand, if you want her to feel love, you've got to learn to express your love in her language. And if you want him to feel love, you've got to learn to speak his language. And I would help them discover each other's language and challenge them to try it. And sometimes they'd come back in 2 or 3 weeks and say, Gary, this is beginning to change things. I mean, the climate's different. And then I'll start teaching it in classes at our church. And the same thing would happen. It was probably 5 years later that I thought, if I could put this concept in a book and write it in the language of the common person, leave out psychological terms that many people would not understand, maybe I could help a lot of couples that I would never have time to see in my office. Of course, little did I know that, as you mentioned earlier, it's been translated now and published in over 50 languages. It's sold over 20 million copies. And people have asked me, how do you account for that, Gary? And I say, well, to me, the short answer is God, and the long answer is God. I said, I couldn't have made that happen if I tried. I do think what has happened on the human level is that people read it, and the lights come on for them, and then they start speaking each other's language, and then they want their brother and his wife to read it, and their sister and her husband. So it's really gone word of mouth all over the world.
Yes. Yes. And it's so simple. I mean, I almost think that people, they hear it and they're like, well, I don't know. Really? That's going to work? And it does.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So can you walk us through the 5 love languages and give us just a few examples for each of them?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And there's no particular order, but one would be words of affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
You look nice in that outfit. I really appreciate what you did. One thing I really like about you is just giving affirming words.
Oh.
And then there's acts of service, doing something for the other person that they would like for you to do. That's the language the gentleman was speaking. He was speaking acts of service loudly.
Yes, definitely.
Doing all those things for her. And then there's gifts. It's universal to give gifts as an expression of love. The gift says they were thinking about me.
Mm-hmm.
Look what they got from me.
Yeah.
And then it's quality time, giving them your undivided attention. That's what the lady was begging for when she said, we don't ever talk.
Exactly.
She didn't mean that they didn't discuss logistics.
Right.
Who's going to pick up the kids, which restaurant you want to go to. She didn't mean that. She meant we don't ever sit down with each other and give our full attention and talk about life together. She was begging for quality time.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 5 is physical touch. And we've long known the emotional power of physical touch. That's why we pick up babies, hold them, kiss them, and cuddle them. And long before they understand the meaning of the word love, they feel love by physical touch. So those are the 5. And the basic idea is that all of us have what I call a primary love language. One of those speaks more deeply to us than the other 4. And all of them are fine, but if we don't receive love in our primary language, we will not feel loved, even though the person is expressing love in some of the other languages.
Yeah. So when you talk about the 5 love languages, have you ever had someone say, well, doing that just doesn't come naturally to me. It's natural for me to want to do like the work the husband was doing versus sitting down and having a conversation. How do you respond to that?
I say, well, I understand that. And particularly if you did not receive one of these love languages growing up, and now you're married to someone and their love language is something you never received, it's going to be a learning curve. But the reality is you can learn to speak any of these languages if you understand how important it is that you're speaking love in their language does for them when they speak your language and how you feel, that's the way to meet their need. And so once we understand the importance of it, and that we're never going to have, a really good marriage if we don't meet each other's emotional need for love, then we can learn these things. I remember the man who told me, he said, Dr. Chapman, my wife's language is words of affirmation. I never received any positive words growing up, and I don't know how to say those things. And I just said to him, well, you are where you are. First of all, we can't change our history. I said, but you can learn to speak this language. I said, can you tell me 3 things that your wife is good at? And he thought a moment, and he said, well, she's a good cook, and she's a good school teacher, and she's a good mother. I wrote those 3 words down, and out beside each one of them, I wrote 2 or 3 sentences. Like on the cooking was something like, honey, I haven't told you this, but I really appreciate all the meals you fix. You're a wonderful cook. Just 2 or 3 sentences out beside each one of them. I said, now here's your assignment. I handed it to him. This week, twice a day, I want you to get in a room by yourself and read these sentences out loud so you actually hear yourself saying these sentences. And when you come back next week, I hope you can say them to me without looking at your notes. He said, well, I'll try. So he did. He came back and he said them to me. I said, okay, now here's your assignment. The next 3 weeks, I want you to give her one of these each week. I don't care what day of the week or what time of day, but you just give her one. I said, now the first time you say one of these to her, you may want to do it when she's looking in another direction, because looking into her face, into her eyes, it might just blow your mind. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I said, but I want you to give her one each week. He said, man, I hope I can do this. I said, well, you just said them to me. If you can say them to me, you can say them to her. He came back and he had done it. And I said, well, how'd your wife respond? He said, well, on the 3rd week, she said to me, what's going on with you? I've never heard you give me so many compliments. I said, what did you say? He said, I just told her, well, honey, we read that book and we took that quiz, and your language is words of affirmation. And I'm just trying to learn how to put my love into words because I do love you. She said, oh, honey, that is so sweet. So we can learn any of these languages if we understand how important it is to a marriage.
And so I think that right there is the key, that even if it doesn't come naturally to you, you can learn it. There's also this flip side that some people have said, well, this is manipulative. And I know that is not the healthy intention of the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but you can use it to manipulate. And I've had people say to me, we took that quiz and we learned each other's language, and I started speaking their language, and I spoke it for 3 weeks, but they didn't respond. I said, okay, so you were speaking their language so that they would speak your language? That's manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not what we're talking about. Biblical love is unconditional. God loved us when we were dirty, rotten sinners.
Right.
Your husband and wife couldn't be any worse than that,
Yeah.
So you just say to God, Lord, you know what I'm married to, and they're not loving me in my language, but I want to do what Jesus did. I want to love him or her, even though they're not lovely. And and God will help you do it.
Well, and let's talk about that for just a second, because to your point, 3 weeks sometimes feels like an eternity, but in reality, it isn't very long. And if your motivation is that you're seeking to love your spouse like Christ loves the church, or to see your spouse through the eyes of Christ, it may take a lot longer than 3 weeks.
Yeah. I've often given a challenge, especially to people who come alone. Their spouse won't even come to counseling, and they won't read a book, and they won't even talk about us. Mm-hmm. I've given them a 6-month challenge. Would you be willing, with God's help, to speak your spouse's primary love language at least once a week for 6 months? And if you will, I'll meet with you every 3 weeks and just walk with you through the journey.
Yeah.
And if they agree to that, even if they're not enthusiastic, if they agree to that, I've seen many, many times, sometimes it's 3 months or 4 months before there is a positive response, but there begins to be a positive response. Now, not always, because we can't make people love us. We can't change people. but we
Right.
can influence people.
Yes.
And we do every single day. If you're married, you influence your spouse either in a negative way or a positive way.
Yeah.
You give them critical words and tell them how bad they are and they don't do this and they don't do that. You're having an influence on them, but it's negative.
Yeah.
But you speak their love language, whether they deserve it or not, you're having a positive influence on them. And love stimulates love. In fact, the Bible says we love God because he first loved us.
Right.
We didn't start it. He started it.
Yeah.
We just responded.
Well, back to what you were saying about the couple that came to you that had been married 30 years. A lot of times there's so much water that has gone underneath the bridge. And when you do begin to change and do things differently, there's suspicion. Like,
Yeah.
why are you doing this? And
Yeah.
and I totally agree. I think it just takes one person to change the dance. But if there's been a lot of negativity and a lot of angst between the two people, it's going to take some time for them to even trust that your motives are pure, right?
Yeah, that's right. And if they say to you, what's going on? Why are you being so nice to me? You just tell the truth. Well, honey, I'm trying to learn how to be a better wife or a better husband.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to learn how to express love to you.
Yeah.
And then they may not say anything for 2 or 3 weeks, but if you continue to do it, they're going to have some other comments along the way.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? I mean, you've never been like this before. Well, I told you, I'm trying to learn how to be a better wife or a better husband and how to express love to you. But somewhere along the line, they begin to warm up and say, okay, all right, what can I do to show you that I love you? Well, now that you've asked, and if you like, and if you really want to, and you tell them, here's what would make me feel loved. So love stimulates love, and it can start with a husband or it can start with a wife.
I love that you actually said, if they ask you, how can I love you well, tell them, versus saying, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you, because it just sets you up for more angst in your marriage relationship.
That's right. And it's a negative statement to them.
Yeah.
You should know my love language.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and even if you thought they weren't being genuine necessarily, still.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. When I think about the things that seem to trip people up, communication, just kind of missing each other in their communication, being afraid of conflict, money, sex, all the things that we know. When I think about the love languages and learning how to speak your spouse's love language, it feels like when the love tank is full, it is easier for you to hear maybe when your words came across a certain way that was hurtful, or there's an issue that needs to be dealt with. When your love tank is full, it feels like those conversations can go easier or be more constructive. Would you agree with that?
No, you're exactly right. We can work through conflicts and hurts much better if the love tank is full. We will even say things like, honey, if something were bothering me, would this be a good time to share it with you? And they may say, not now. I'm da, 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 da. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. That's fine. But whenever you're ready, you just let me know. Well, they're going to come back. They're dying to know now. They'll come back. But you asked permission. You didn't just tell them, and then you can say, when you did so-and-so or you said so-and-so, this is how I felt. And I'm assuming you didn't mean it that way, but that's the way I felt. And I just wanted to share it with you because I love you and I want us to be open and close. It's those kind of conversations that's easier to do if your love tank is full. If you feel loved. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you wish that you had known the 5 love languages when y'all got married?
Oh, man. It would have saved us a lot of trouble in those early stages of our marriage if we had known this, but we didn't. And what I did, I loved her in the way I wanted to be loved. I didn't even think about it. I just gave her words of affirmation. How nice she looked and how much I appreciated what she did. And I probably told her a dozen times a day, I love you. This is when I was still in love, and I love you, honey. I'm so glad I married you. But one night, somewhere along the line, she said, you keep on saying, I love you. If you love me, why don't you help me? And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you don't ever offer to wash dishes or vacuum the floors or clean the toilet. I mean, you don't offer to do anything. And I didn't say this, Julie, but what I was thinking, what are you talking about? My mother did those things. Whoa.
You're probably very fortunate that you did not say that.
I didn't say that, but we bring our history with us, But looking back on that, she was telling me her love language was acts of service. I didn't know anything about love languages, but that's what she was telling me. And I did say, well, honey, I don't mind washing dishes. I didn't realize you wanted me to do it. And I said, I can vacuum floors. I said, but I don't know how to clean toilets. And she said, well, I can teach you, So we finally stumbled upon how to express love, though we wouldn't have even talked about it in any sense like we're talking about it now. We just, eventually we stumbled upon how to communicate love to the other person. It was a meaningful way. Because when I started doing positive things for her, then she started expressing appreciation. And she was giving me words of affirmation.
We're getting exactly, what filled your life. Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
It makes me think so many couples, I talk to them and they will say, we feel like we're going into marriage with our eyes wide open, that we just can't think of a single topic that we haven't talked about. We are very much in love. We very much agree on the things that we would consider foundational in our marriage. And yet they get a month or so into marriage and they're seeing that maybe their eyes aren't so wide open and they're struggling a bit to figure out, how do we do this dance well together?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And often we're just playing the role that we saw our parents play. Whatever his father did, then that was good. He tries to do that, and she does things what she thinks her mother ought to do. But that's why the more preparation they can do of talking about who's going to do what in the marriage is really, really helpful, And Julie, here's another thing, and you may know this, but I got a new book now on the love languages that I'm really excited about. It's building on the love language thing. But through the years, people have asked me two questions. They said, Gary, you mentioned dialects in the original book, that each of the languages have dialects.
Yeah.
And what are the dialects? And then I've had other people say, well, Gary, you also mentioned that personality interfaces with the love languages, but you don't discuss that in the book. And I said, you're right. I said, I haven't given not a lot of thought to that. But I teamed up with Les and Leslie Parrott, whom you know, and we wrote a book. The title of the book is Your Most Important Love Language. And the answer to that is the love language of your partner. But in that book, in each of the love languages, we talk about the dialects or some of the dialects in that language and explain them, so that you learn not only what your language is, but what one or two dialects are most meaningful to you. And then we also talk about personality and how your personality interfaces how you speak the love languages. For example, if a person is an introvert and words of affirmation is their language, and that's their language, so you're gonna surprise them on their birthday, and you're gonna just tell them you're taking them out to eat, but you're gonna go to a house where there's 30 of their friends there, and we're gonna have a celebration of that. And they walk in and they're just totally shocked, and they're going to be nice, while they're there, and they're going to talk to the friends, but all the time they're thinking, oh, honey, I thought we would just go out together and eat, just the two of us, So understanding the dialect and personality is going to be very, very helpful to a lot of couples. And so I'm excited about this new book. I think it's, I tell people, don't read this new one unless you've read the old one. You need the basic concept, but this is going to take you deeper and make it even more effective for many couples.
So read the 5 love languages first.
Yes.
And then read this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. Okay. So you have written so many books. The languages of apology, um, the idea of even blended families and the 5 love languages, and so many others. I'm thinking about the couples who are, 10 years or less in their marriage and wanting to get it right.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're not ever going to always get it right. But what would you say are really like golden nuggets? Hey, these are the things to focus on and be really careful about majoring on the minors because that's going to distract you from these things over here. What would you say are the major things?
Well, I would say what comes to my mind is what I sometimes call the 2 essentials to having a long-term healthy marriage. One of them is the love language, understanding the love language and speaking it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And that's why you need to check in once in a while and say, honey, on the scale of 0 to 10, how full is your love tank this week? If they say anything less than 10, you say, well, this week, what could I do that would be most meaningful? And what they say may not be their love language that particular week. It may be something else,
Right.
So meeting each other's need for love. But the other is learning to apologize and forgive because none of us are perfect. And so sometimes we're going to hurt each other. Sometimes it's unintentional hurt. Sometimes we just lost our temper and yelled out and said things that we later regret. But if we and we've hurt, we put a barrier between us, an emotional barrier between us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go away with the passing of time. It only goes away when we apologize and then they choose to forgive us. And that's why that apology book, if I had to recommend only two of my books, it would be the 5 love languages and the 5 apology languages, because we have different ideas on how to apologize. We
sure do.
taught by our parents, and we do what our parents told us,
Yeah.
If the parent said, go tell her you're sorry, he goes and tells his sister he's sorry, he pushed her. And now he's married, so he'll tell his wife, I'm sorry, and she's thinking you certainly are. Is there anything else you want to say?
Like, I won't do that again. Please forgive me, or something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So many helpful words that you have given us today. I appreciate that because I think back to when we got married, and I so wish that we had the 5 love languages and that we had someone speak into us about how important it is to not let pride get in the way of an apology. That, seriously, if you're wanting to go the long haul, you have to figure that out. And so this podcast is called Marriage on the Daily, and I love to wrap up my time with my guests by asking the question, what would you encourage couples to do on the daily that will impact their marriage in a positive way?
I think I would say, ask God every single morning to help you have the attitude of Christ towards your spouse. Remember, Jesus said about himself, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. So, Lord, show me how I can have a positive influence on my spouse today. I think you bring God into it, you're going to have outside help to bring back to your mind, things that you can do that will enrich the life of your spouse. I don't know anything that's more important than that. And it's following the example of Christ. And we're challenged in the Bible in Philippians 2, let the attitude of Christ be in you.
Yeah.
So, that's what I would say.
Well, and I think that is incredibly powerful because it just strikes me. That's a mindset.
Yeah.
Straight out of the gates, first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
A mindset about how you will think about your spouse today. Man, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. For more resources and updates, visit marriageonthedaily.com. And until next time, remember, it's the little things that matter on the daily in your marriage.